Welcome to this edition of Diligence Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, and I'll be your host for today's show. As you can see, we're back again at the New York Stock Exchange and happy to be here. And today we're going to be talking about the board's role in strategic planning. And joining me is Alisa Norris, who's a board member with Standard Motor Products and Vitamix. Welcome, Alisa.
Hi, thanks so much, TK.
Well, so before we get into the strategic planning, I want to ask you, because I know that you are the chairperson for the New York City chapter of Women Corporate Directors, WCD as it's called, and your organization has been fostering, the advancement of women on boards and getting all that stuff worked out for some time. We've sort of hit a mini milestone in 30% women on boards, which is a big deal. It's not where it's gone slower than still we wanted it to go, but we have to be happy that we're hitting some goals and some steps along the way, and certainly 30% was one of those. So quickly tell us a little bit about WCD and what it does.
Sure. So Women Corporate Directors is the largest organization of female directors across the globe. We have about 2,500 women who represent more than 5,000 boards, both public boards and very large private boards. Here in the New York City area, we are the largest chapter. And what's really great about the organization, it provides women with tools and programming so that we are always in the know on the most topical issues that are in the boardroom. And we've long been a platform for diversity in the boardroom, to your point. For more than 20 years, we've been talking about diversity in the boardroom and doing much to use our platform to increase the number of women who are in the boardroom. As you mentioned, we've hit a good milestone, but we have a long way to go until we get that parity.
Well, you guys have done a good job, so
Thank you.
should be proud of that. So I have you here because you serve on the Standard Motor Products Strategic Planning Committee, okay?
I do.
And I can't tell you how many questions we get from viewers and other people about what's the role of the board as far as strategic planning goes.
Right.
And so can you sort of share with our audience sort of what the charge of the committee is and how you sort of go about your duties and what those duties are?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, if you take a step back, all boards are responsible for evaluating the strategic plan of an organization, right? But what I think differentiates organizations that have a strategic planning committee is it's really elevating the role and the importance of strategy in the boardroom. And that's really critical, right? Because it not only gives a more sustained focus for the board and for management, but it allows us to really have a mechanism by which we always are keeping tabs and helping management around looking around the corner, so to speak, when it comes to the strategic plan. I'll talk a little bit about how we run it at Standard Motor. So we meet 3 times a year, and what's I think unique is one of those times is a real deep dive. We spend about a day and a half to 2 days with a broad group of management, broader than we meet with typically in the boardroom. So about 20 leaders. So you really get to see the strategy in action. We're not a committee that listens to just readouts. We really go pretty deep in understanding the fabric of the company, the competitive landscape, the industry overall. So we really encourages and fosters really deep dialogue. And the kind of dialogue that has management perhaps thinking about different types of strategies or strategic initiatives and pillars based on that kind of conversation. Hand in glove with that session, we also spend a good amount of time either at our customer, so a big retailer in our case, or at one of our facilities. So it really grounds the strategic planning process in reality and helps it bring it to life pretty differently. Our other 2 meetings are more standard committee meetings as part of the board work. And then we are sure, though, not to just talk about strategic planning in those 3 meetings. In every single meeting, on every agenda, even for the broader board, we are talking strategic planning because it is so critical to the success of the company.
Yeah. So do you only have directors as part of the committee, or is that a committee where you also have senior management as part of the actual committee?
Yeah, no, it's only the directors.
Okay.
And we have all of our independent directors as part of that committee. We have 10 board members are part of the board, and 7 of us are independent. So that's how that's comprised. But we are always interacting with the C-suite in terms of that strategic plan.
Yeah. So explain to me, so I assume that the way you discussed it and that you have it come up at every meeting, that you're either reviewing results, seeing changes in your market.
Yeah.
So you're always sort of in the planning mode. But is that when you review the results and stuff like that? Talk a little bit about how that happens with management at meetings, and do you revise the plan,
Sure.
as you're going, even that's tied to the budget?
Well, look, a good plan is a living document, right? And sometimes you have situations, let's use the supply chain woes that we're experiencing now, that you need to course correct and make shifts to strategy
Yeah.
because of competitive forces that are out there that are underpinning and affecting your business. I'd say it's a mix. We are always looking in terms of the key strategic initiatives that management lays out and that the board approves. And look, part of our role is not just helping them evaluate the strategic plan, but it's also, identifying issues that can impact that plan. And those issues are always changing, which may require tweaks in the short term. As well as really ensuring that the execution of the plan is going as appropriate. So we do have a set of strategic pillars that we are always looking at that tend to be further out. But of course, impacts to the business that are happening in the here and the now are discussed as well. So it really is a mix of the two.
Yeah. And I assume that you equally communicate with members, for example, on the compensation committee, because
Yes.
all this stuff has to tie together. And then, you have budgets, you have the financial part of that.
Absolutely.
So all that gets coordinated. And then does your committee sort of review a final plan before you take it to the whole board? Or how does that work?
So how we've structured it is actually all board members are part of the committee. So we don't necessarily, have to go through that kind of structure.
Okay.
And that's the real benefit in that regard. And because everyone's a member of it, you mentioned compensation. I mean, obviously, when it comes to the budgeting, when it comes to compensation, we're all very mindful of how that impacts both the short-term goals that we've set out for management and the company, as well as longer-term ones.
Yeah. So let's move away from the standard products, motor products, for a minute.
Yeah.
And just let me ask you, when you talk about what might be the ideal relationship with the CEO, because different CEOs operate and use the board in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sure you know that from
Yeah.
your multiple boards.
Yeah.
Some use the board in a very major way. Others just use them sort of as a check and balance,
Right,
and
right.
that stuff. So is there some experiences maybe that you've had or that you've seen on other boards that you say, well, this seems to be the system that really works best for the board of directors?
Yeah, I mean, I think high-performing boards need to have a really good relationship with the CEO and management, but really the CEO, right? No board director wants the CEO to just tell us when things are going well, right? We want to be the sounding board and the opportunity to help management look around the corner and ask those hard questions, particularly when there are challenging times like we've been in the past nearly 2 years. Right? But from what I've seen is the best relationships are ones where there's transparency, where there's really strong dialogue that happens not just inside the boardroom, but outside the boardroom on an ongoing basis. And it's not just through the monthly dashboards, but when it's something happening in the business, being able to call up the relevant board members, either on a particular committee or those who have functional expertise as an operator, or the like, just to be able to be the sounding board and for us to be there to support management as we look to all increase our shareholder value for them.
Yeah.
But that relationship's really important.
So if you had to, as somebody that's been through this, if you had to offer one final piece of advice
Yes.
to board members that are going to go through this process, what might you think of offering as advice to them as they will go through their planning process?
I would advise them to go deep, right? There's a real benefit to spending some meaningful time with management and management
Like a
below
retreat,
the C-suite. Yes.
like a retreat
We do an offsite, but it allows you to really understand in a different way the fabric of the organization, the competitive forces that can impact the company, the competition and the like, but being able to go deep, but not viewing it as then one and done, but rather always going back and evaluating with management in your regular committee meeting or board meetings, how is the company faring against that strategy, and view your strategic plan as something that is a living, breathing piece of the company and in terms of how it's going to achieve its success.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I can't It's great advice, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come
Well, thank
and
you,
join
TK.
us and passing it on. So I appreciate that.
Same here. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic to help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.